In April 2020, school closures due to COVID-19 were at their peak, resulting in the largest mass education disruption in history. Countrywide school closures were a near universal policy response in the first phase. While we continue to see significant education disruption, evidence shows it has serious negative effects and deepens inequities. In response to these challenges, researchers and experts from CIPPEC, Western University, UNESCO's International Institute for Educational Planning, UNICEF, and the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies submitted a policy brief to the 2020 Think 20 Special Task Force on COVID-19 as part of the G20 process. The recommendations were aimed at G20 countries and donors on rebuilding and supporting resilient education systems, moving from first response to recovery. The Think 20, or T20, is the official engagement group of the G20. It brings together leading think tanks and research centers worldwide to provide research-based policy recommendations to country leaders.
The policy brief recommends a crisis-sensitive approach to educational planning with a strong equity focus to ensure education continuity. 6 recommendations were suggested as macro-level education policy action to be applied in domestic contexts and for G20 donors to consider when supporting education systems globally. These are: first, institutionalize an integrated crisis-sensitive planning approach for immediate, medium, and long-term education response and recovery and extended cross-sectoral approaches prioritizing vulnerable groups. Second, ensure comprehensive education continuity and access focusing on the most vulnerable. Third, address supply, well-being, and capacity of teaching and education personnel in addition to working conditions as educational frontline workers to ensure quality education and learning. Fourth, strengthen risk analysis and use health and education data to monitor, guide, and institute localized responses. Fifth, when appropriate, ensure safe school operations and better schools. Sixth, increase domestic, humanitarian, and international financing, international cooperation, and cross-collaboration for education.
A number of recommendations were included as part of the high-level 2020 T20 calls for commitment to education for G20 leaders and education ministers. The recommendations were presented at a special T20 side event, COVID-19 and the Global Education Emergency, Planning Systems for Recovery and Resilience, of the T20 Summit, where Dr. Cardini discussed the main priorities for education with the task force lead chair. Dr. Srivastava presented the policy brief and led a moderated discussion with co-authors to discuss the implications of the recommendations going forward.
This work will be continued for 2021 T20 Italy. Researchers and experts from these organizations are working on a brief for policy action to address issues of equity and inclusion for education systems recovery. More to come, stay tuned. For more information, log into www.t20italy.org.